everyone, welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and welcome to my new freshly inspired Oscar nominations video predicting the nominees for the Academy Awards. The Academy Award nominations are coming right around the corner. They're coming on January 17th, so we only have about 2 more weeks to kind of let these different names and films fester in our brains, especially coming off of a very intense Golden Globes night the night before. And this is going to be partially a reaction to the Golden Globes, but I'm going to kind of be reacting to the Golden Globes as I do my predictions. Obviously, Critics' Choice is coming up soon. We're going to be getting SAG nominations and PGA nominations and BAFTA nominations in the next few weeks. So after today, the next time you see me do Oscar nomination predictions is going to be my final Oscar nomination predictions on January 16th. That's right. So the day after BAFTAs are announced, I will be doing my Oscar final nomination predictions, and then the day after, we will be getting those Oscar nominations. So this is like the last round of predictions before we start to see all these awards bodies throw their nominations out, because I think the Globes is an important trendsetter. You know, it is the first thing that everyone sees for the industry every single year. And yes, Globes are so early that we see a lot of trends change. If we remember a few years ago, Everything All Everywhere All at Once did not have a good Globes night. It won, I think, 1 or 2 awards that night. I mean, Coda didn't win a single Golden Globe. But I also think it's important not to totally disregard the Golden Globes because, as I said, they are the first televised awards. So it is the first time that most of the industry is getting to see people make speeches, and speeches are so important. There are people that after last night I watched their speeches, I want to award an Oscar because I want to see them make that Oscar speech. I mean, look at Demi Moore, look at Brady Corbet, all these really amazing emotional speeches that really excited me. And I think that's the thing with the Globes is, yes, they happen early. Yes, there's a lot of award season left to go. Yes, it's a smaller voting body. Yes, it is a more inclusive voting body than it's been in the last few years, but it is still small nonetheless. And it's much more internationally skewed now. You know, we're not seeing them just award all the big celebrities. Otherwise, we would have seen Angelina Jolie win an award. We probably would have seen Glenn Powell win an award. But I think it's important nonetheless to see that this is a chance for people to get up on stage, make speeches, and start their awards trajectories and their awards narratives. And I think we see it so many times in past years. People like Troy Kotzer, who is not a name at all, someone like Divine Joy Randolph, someone even like Robert Downey Jr., who's of course an established name, but seeing him make that first speech, it really does set the momentum for the rest of the season, because all it takes is someone who's voting for Critics' Choice to see Demi Moore make a speech and go, I want to see her make a speech at the Critics' Choice. And then the Oscars say, I want to see her make a speech at the Oscars. Like, I think speeches have a lot to do with award season narratives. And I think, especially for some films that didn't get any Golden Globes or only got a few awards, I think, you know, this could be a little bit of a halting of the momentum. I mean, look at Anora. This was a front runner for most people. And now we see it walk away with 0 Globes. Does that mean it's going to walk away with 0 Oscars? Of course not. I still think it's a front runner in some categories. But I also think it's important to note that maybe it is not the far and above front runner that we once thought it was. And I don't think there is a far and above frontrunner, because even the 2 films that won the most last night, The Brutalist and Amelia Perez, are still very divisive amongst audiences. So I think that also makes for a really fun award season. As I said, I will be giving my final Oscar nomination predictions next week, but I predict that to change drastically in just the few weeks since I'm covering this video, because again, momentum shifts so quickly in this award season, especially that this is a tighter and shorter award season than some past years. I mean, I remember a few years ago, it went to the end of March, and it was just so many months and months and months of talking about these films. Now I feel like, you know, the Oscars are like 2 months away, and that's really exciting, but it also means that we're going to be seeing so many shifts change and trends change in different directions. You know, the compass is pointing north, but it might be pointing south tomorrow, but that's also what makes it incredibly fun and why I love award season and why I do love the Globes, because while they are flawed in some areas, while they were super flawed a few years ago before they made some drastic changes, I still think it's important to look into them as just an indicator of what the industry might be thinking. So I'm going to go through my predictions really quickly for all the major categories and some of the minor categories that I haven't talked about in a while, and just give my thoughts now that we've seen the Globe winners, now that we know at least where some of the industry is leaning. How does that affect overall what I think will happen at the Academy Awards? So let's kick it off right now, of course, with Best Picture. And Best Picture actually is the most confusing award now, because up until now I was like, it's probably Anora. Anora is the front runner. It won the Palme d'Or. It was placing in top 3 at TIFF, and I still think that helps it a lot. Obviously, Parasite is still the only film ever to win the Palme d'Or and then place in the top 3 at TIFF, and it went on to win Best Picture. But I also think, you know, the fact that Anora got 0 Golden Globes, that halts its momentum. As much as it hurts me to say, I love Anora, and I know a lot of people love Anora. I know it's a crowd pleaser. It's not a divisive film. There are some people who are going at bat against Anora on Twitter, but a lot of it is coming from behind the scenes stuff with like intimacy coordinators. You know, it's not coming from a disdain for the film itself. A lot of people really love the film itself. So the fact that Anora isn't the front runner, it feels a little wrong to me, but I also can't put a film that won 0 Golden Globes at the top of my list. It's just not how I want to operate, because this could be a Star is Born 2.0. As we saw a few years ago, I guess it's more than a few years ago now. It's like 8 years ago. But A Star is Born, it won a lot of awards early on. Then it slowly got minimal and minimal and minimal. And then it only walked away with a song win at the end of the day. And I think that could be what happens to Anora, where on Oscar night, it only walks away with Screenplay, and that's it. And that's a scary world to live in, because I love that movie so much. But it's also a realistic world. It's one where the industry is just a little bit out of sync with audiences. And I think we see this with a few other films. I mean, look at Wicked Part 1, a big audience hit. Only walked away with 1 award last night as well. And that was the most popular box office achievement, and it wasn't even the top box office grosser. Inside Out was the top box office grosser. So obviously, I think Wicked, Nora, some of these more popular audience films, I think we all kind of got caught up in the hype, and we thought, yeah, no, those are definitely going to be the front runners. But I think really what the front runners are going to be are the ones that are liked by some audiences, but mostly liked by the industry, and also feel like monumental works of cinema. And I think The Brutalist right now is that front runner. Now, obviously, it won Best Picture, won Best Director, won Best Actor, so that's a really good trio to get from the Globes. Obviously, the front runner never lasts, so I don't think The Brutalist will be the front runner come next week, come a month from now, come 2 months from now. But right now, it feels like the safest bet to have a number one. And a lot of people are going to be asking, well, Dylan, Amelia Perez also had a huge night. I know that, but I do think Amelia Perez is now a top contender for sure. But the Netflix of it all has me a little trepidatious, just because a Netflix film has never won the award. And also one international film has won this award, and it was Parasite. I just don't think Amelia Perez has the passion that Parasite does. But again, I'm looking at it from a gaze of someone who is on Twitter, as someone who talks to other film fans, not necessarily someone who's tapped into the industry. And it's clear from last night, the industry loves Amelia Perez. So there's a very good chance Amelia Perez wins Best Picture. And I still think it's a top 4 contender. It's just, am I sold right now that it is the front runner? Probably not, though I think Globes gave it the biggest boost of any of these films. And I think another boost was Conclave. I think Conclave, yes, it went down a few spots in my Best Picture predictions, but it has stayed in that top 4 pretty much the whole year. And I think it's because it is just that safe bet. Everyone kind of likes it. There aren't many haters of it. I mean, some really right-wing Republicans hate it, but they're not the ones who are in the industry voting for it. But also, I struggle to think about what Conclave's package would be for Best Picture. And I think right now it's just Screenplay. That's kind of what I'm thinking about Anora now too. I'm like, if it only wins Screenplay and Picture, I mean, not a lot of films do that. Obviously, some films do, but not a lot of films do. And I just don't think Ralph Fiennes is going to win. I don't think it's going to get a supporting win. It might not even get a supporting nomination. I know a lot of people are thinking of Isabella Rossellini. I'll get there in a sec. But I do think there is a case, though, that Conclave could win, because it is an audience favorite. I don't see a lot of audiences disliking it. And I do think it is just all across the board a safe choice. And that's not to dismiss the film, but I think The Brutalist has some very controversial moments to it. It's a very long film. It's a very dense film. Even Anora, it's talking about taboo subjects, same as Amelia Perez. And I think Conclave dives into that, especially in the ending. But I think for the most part, it plays well across the different demographics. So I think Conclave is definitely one to keep an eye out for. But then next up at number 5, and this one continues to rise by the day, and that is The Substance. And I think The Substance got a good boost last night. Yes, it only won Best Actress, but I think the fact that it won Best Actress over the lead actress of Anora, the lead actress of Amelia Perez, over Amy Adams, who's an industry darling, over Zendaya, who's a huge, big booming celebrity right now, I think it's really big. I mean, Demi Moore obviously has the narrative on her side. We'll get to her when we get to Best Actress, but I think The Substance, it's just a film that seems to be like really building that fire in award season. It seems to really be the passion pick. And while, yes, Anora is a crowd pleaser, Wicked Part 1 is a crowd pleaser, a lot of audiences are loving Conclave, a lot of audiences love Dune, Sing Sing is a favorite, Complete Unknown is doing great in theaters right now. I still think The Substance is that fun one that everyone's kind of going around being like, you should check this movie out. It's so cool. It's so interesting. It's so unique. And it has something to say about Hollywood, which is a big. I mean, you look at all these films, not a lot of them are directly about the industry and about Hollywood. I mean, The Substance is, and I think if they are going by, what movie kind of represents the industry in a really interesting way, I think that is The Substance. So I would not be surprised if next week The Substance is in my top 3. I wouldn't be surprised if come Oscar time, it is one of the top 2 or 3 contenders. I really could see a world, especially because of these tech nominations. I mean, we've seen Dune kind of take a little bit of a nosedive in some of these predictions, and I think if Dune is not going to be a tech sweeper, I mean, what is the other tech sweeper? I mean, obviously we could see a few techs for The Brutalist, but I also could see a few techs for The Substance. There is a world where it wins editing. There's a world where it wins makeup. Obviously, I think it's going to win makeup. Now, it didn't get a lot of shortlist mentions, but also the shortlist, those are individual branches voting, but I think once it gets to the Oscars, I mean, there's a good chance it will pick up some wins. I think it's going to get nominated for Best Director. So I really like the idea of The Substance being not just a Best Picture nominee, but a top contender to potentially win. And then looking at the rest of them, I mean, I just don't think anything from number 6 to 10 are likely to win at this point. I still think Wicked is a shoo-in for a nomination. I think at this point, A Complete Unknown has been getting nominated pretty much everywhere as far as the industry is concerned. So I think that's going to get in. Dune Part 2 has been slipping. It's been missing a few places that it really should have gotten in. But again, it's a very early release in the year. I still think it's going to get in, especially because it is the big technical achievement of the year. And then those 9 and 10 slots. That's kind of where I think the conversation has to kind of hone in here for Best Picture, because I really struggle to figure out what exactly those last 2 slots are. I feel passionate about Sing Sing, but every single day I get more and more nervous that Sing Sing is just not getting out there. It's just not being seen. It's not being heard. And obviously it's not being seen because A24 fumbled the release of it, but it is going to be re-released in January. And I do wonder if maybe that kind of builds a little bit of a resurgence. I think if any film is going to have a coda trajectory where it gets nominated for the Oscars and people actually start checking it out because of the Oscar nomination, then I think a lot of people are going to be like, whoa, this should win. Like, this is a really good film. Because I think of all these films, this seems like the most Best Picture-y film. It seems like the one that is going to be the most crowd-pleasing, the one that's going to put most smiles on faces, but also going to make you shed a lot of tears. So I do think Sing Sing, if it gets in, still has a shot at becoming a contender. It's just a question of, is it going to get that nomination? I think the biggest scary thing was it missing Globes, because Globes, they give 6 drama spots and it didn't win. It didn't get a spot. It only got Coleman Domingo for Best Actor. It didn't even get Clarence Macklin in supporting for the Globes. So it's definitely scary. It's definitely scary out there for Sing Sing, and I am worried that it's going to fall off, but I still have it teetering on the edge. And I think the other thing that is helping it in is the fact that Nickel Boys is losing steam, especially in the last week. I mean, Nickel Boys didn't get many BAFTA long list nominations at all. It didn't get mentioned by BAFTA a lot. And I know BAFTA, they don't typically go for very American Black films, and I think that is kind of something to judge the BAFTA for. But also, like, Nickel Boys is such a technical achievement. I mean, Ramel Ross has been getting nominated for director awards everywhere, and it didn't even get shortlisted for director at BAFTA, or longlisted, I should say. So I'm very worried about Nickel Boys. But right now, looking at the other ones on the bubble, like September 5, it got that Globe nomination, but I don't think that's going to squeak in. Challengers, as much as I would love to see it, I just don't necessarily know if the passion is held over. Also, because I don't think it's going to get any other above the line nominations. And then A Real Pain, which is a Searchlight film, but I feel like right now A Real Pain is solely being pitched for Kieran Culkin and for the screenplay. And I just think, yes, there's a world where it comes along. Emma Stone's a producer. They love Emma Stone, but I don't know. I just struggle to find the passion right now for A Real Pain outside of just the performance and the screenplay. It feels like they know exactly what they want to campaign, and they're going hard in that direction. But also, if Kieran Culkin is such a frontrunner to win supporting actor, then why wouldn't A Real Pain get in? It would be weird for Kieran Culkin to sweep the season and for the film he's in not even be nominated. So the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like hesitant about leaving A Real Pain out. I kind of want to put it back in, but right now I just don't see a world where Nickel Boys and Sing Sing are not Best Picture nominations in a year with so many strong films. I don't know. I'm very conflicted. I think those are the 13, though. I think, and then when we get to the 14, 15, I mean, those are the international films. All We Imagine Is Light, Seed of the Sacred Fig, Gladiator 2's in there, Nosferatu. But like these films, I don't really see a path for getting into Best Picture at this point. They haven't really been nominated for Best Picture anywhere else. And yes, All We Imagine Is Light, we could see an international surprise. But the fact that we have Amelia Perez already in there, I just don't see it happening, especially for a film that isn't eligible in Best International Film. I know we saw it with Anatomy of a Fall, but Anatomy of a Fall last year was nominated for Globes. It was nominated for PGA. It was nominated everywhere, and we haven't been seeing that with All We Imagine Is Light. So I think right now, those 13 are the ones to look out for, and we still have a long ways to go. And I think those right now are my 10, but anything can happen. And I think especially with the Globes, the winning conversation has become all the more confusing, because does The Brutalist feel like the Best Picture winner at the end of the day? I don't know, but I feel like right now it's the most likely, so I'm going to stick with that. And moving into Best Director, we're going to put Brady Corbet at number 1. It used to be Sean Baker for a little while, but I think Brady Corbet has been winning a lot of Critics Awards, and obviously Critics Awards don't necessarily translate to director, but especially with this category, I feel like the director branch is a little artsier, is a little more artsy-fartsy. That's why I've never really thought John M2 was going to be a contender for this thing, and I really do think, just looking at those 5 nominees, like that is the artsiest 5 you can get. I mean, Brady Corbet, you got Jacques Audiard, even even though I don't really see how that should be a nominee. It is. It's going to be because they always have an international nominee in there. Emilia Perez is an industry favorite. That's just going to be what it is. I do still think Sean Baker gets in, but I think his steam is running out. I think if anything, he's going to be up for a screenplay, and he should be. That should be where he kind of campaigns most of his campaign is in screenplay. And then Corley Farge, I really do think The Substance is gaining that momentum. And I think, for getting so much criticism of leaving out women last year, I think it'd be really cool. I know a woman got in for Anatomy of a Fall, but Greta Gerwig being a snub was like a huge thing that the Oscars, got flack for. And while I don't necessarily think they should have, because they obviously got the director Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall in there, I do think, they want to try to still get a woman into Best Director if they can. And Corley Farge is not just the token woman of the group, but she's also very deserving. And The Substance is gaining that momentum. It's becoming an industry darling. It's going to probably win Best Actress in Makeup. So I could definitely see The Substance being a top 5 contender. And I think Corley Farge comes along for the ride. And then I do have Ramel Ross. I do think I'm a little worried because Nickel Boys had a really bad showing at BAFTA long lists. But again, BAFTA and Oscars are not one of the same. And I think of all the really artsy picks, Ramel Ross, what he's doing with that film just seems so much up the Academy's alley. But if it misses Best Picture, I'm not putting Ramel Ross in director. So this is really, hinging on the fact that Nickel Boys is going to be in for Best Picture. If it ends up coming out of my 10, I'm going to take Ramel Ross out of my 5 because I don't think anyone is getting in here without a Best Picture nomination, which is also sadly why I had to finally take my boy Mohamed Rasoloff off for The Seed of the Sacred Fig. I just have to be real with myself at this point, and he hasn't really been getting nominated many places. And I think if he were to get that BAFTA long list mention, I would keep him in here, but he didn't. And I just don't see a world where he gets in with no precursors whatsoever from main industry players. And I think that's also why I put Payal Kapadia above him, because she at least got in for the Globe. But even then, I don't see another international nominee getting in, especially because Corley Farge also kind of fits that international category. She and Jacques Audiard would be the 2 international representations for the Oscars. So I don't necessarily think we're going to see them and Payal Kapadia and Rasoloff get in. But I do think they are still on the bubble. I think Denis Villeneuve, it's a sad story, but he just hasn't been popping up in a lot of places that he should be. He's been getting much less mentions for critic awards and stuff that I expected him to get. I expected him to be kind of nominated across the board, making up for last time, but it really feels like Two Towers again. And I just don't think Dune Part 2 is going to get as many above the line categories as people think. I think it's still getting in for screenplay, but I don't think it's getting any acting. And sadly, I think Denis Villeneuve is going to miss again, and the internet's going to go crazy. But that is just my bold prediction. I predicted it last time, but now I'm even more certain that he's going to miss. Also because Edward Berger has a case. He didn't get in for All Quiet on the Western Front, and All Quiet on the Western Front was a pretty heavy favorite in a lot of categories. So the fact that he couldn't get in for that makes me a little nervous that he won't get in here, but he is a more renowned name at this point because of All Quiet and Conclave. So I think Edward Berger can definitely slide in. I think if Nickel Boys doesn't get picture, I think Berger takes Ramel Ross's spot. That's what I'm thinking right now. Everything else, I don't really feel passionate about any of the other potential on the bubble nominees. Let's move on to Best Actor, though. This one, same 5 as last time. The only thing is that I switched Timothée Chalamet and Coleman Domingo. I think the fact that A Complete Unknown is a more surefire Best Picture nominee right now than Sing Sing is, it gives Timothée Chalamet a little edge. But I think winning the Globe kind of puts Adrian Brody at the top. I said it when I saw the movie. I think Adrian Brody's going to sweep. I think he's going to win Golden Globes, Critic Choice, SAG, and BAFTA. And I think he's going to win the Oscar. I think he's going to get all 5 of those. I think Timothée Chalamet, if anything, is probably going to get SAG if he's to spoil any of Adrian Brody's wins. But even then, I just don't see it happening. I think Adrian Brody has been kind of out of the conversation for so long that now, this is a big career resurgence for him. Whereas Timothée Chalamet is still young. He's got years and years and years to win awards. I think he is the runner-up, though. I don't see as much passion for Ralph Fiennes' performance. I don't see much passion for Daniel Craig's performance. But let's talk about Daniel Craig, because he is the 5th slot I have here. And a lot of people are saying, after Sebastian Stan won Best Actor for the Golden Globes, comedy or musical for A Different Man, a lot of people were saying Sebastian Stan, he just secured that 5 spot. And I do think there is a world where that happens. The only thing is, A Different Man, I just haven't been seeing enough of a campaign for it. It's been getting a lot of mentions in some critics groups and obviously the Gothams and, maybe Indie Spirits will award it something, but I just don't really think it's been a huge industry player. And yes, it won Golden Globes, but think about who the competition was. I don't think Glenn Powell for Hitman is a real serious Oscar contender at this point. Gabriel LaBelle for Saturday Night isn't even here. Neither is Jesse Plemons for Kinds of Kindness. Jesse Eisenberg for Real Pain, it seems like they're looking mostly at him for screenplay, which really just leaves Hugh Grant. And I think, if anything, Sebastian Stan winning for Different Man doesn't necessarily put him into the Oscar 5 as much as it shows that Hugh Grant is not getting into the Oscar 5, because I think Hugh Grant was the closest to an Oscar nomination, and then he didn't get the Golden Globe win, and I think that kind of sealed his fate there. I still think Hugh Grant's going to get nominated for BAFTA. I still think there's a world he's going to get nominated for SAG, but the fact that Hugh Grant couldn't win Best Comedy Musical against a bunch of actors who weren't in Best Picture films, I think that just goes to show that Hugh Grant is not as strong as we thought, even though he is getting, next to those 5 who are in right now, the most critics mentions. He's getting even more critics mentions than Sebastian Stan. So I think Sebastian Stan's win, while awesome, does not necessarily guarantee him a spot in the 5. I think if anything, it shows that Hugh Grant is not in the 5, if that makes sense. It's almost like that process of elimination thing. And I really want to see Hugh Grant get nominated. I haven't seen Heretic yet, but I just think the fact that a horror performance could get in is really cool. And even A Different Man has some like horror thriller moments. So I think it would be really cool to see Sebastian Stan or Hugh Grant get in. But right now, I think all Sebastian Stan's win did for me was really confirm that the 5 we have in there are the 5 that are going to be staying in there till Oscars. I don't know, though. I could be wrong. We will see. Let's move on to Best Actress, though, and starting with, of course, the big news story, which is Demi Moore winning for The Substance. And as soon as she won, I said, there it is. That's your Oscar winner. And there's a few reasons for that. And I know we can't just necessarily jump right to what the Globes do as gospel, but here's the thing. Mikey Madison's very young, and I think Demi Moore is obviously much older. She has that industry respect, and I think traditionally for Best Actor and Best Actress, they typically go much older, and that is because they like to award legacy, or they at least like to award people who have been in the business for a while. It's why we saw Emma Stone beat Lily Gladstone last year. Yes, Emma Stone's young, but she is someone who's been in the industry for a while. She's been winning a lot of awards in past years, and Lily Gladstone was kind of this fresh, brand new face, and I think we see that with a lot of years. We see a lot of those trends tend to happen. It's also why I'm predicting Adrian Brody over Timothée Chalamet. And I think the same is true here. I think Demi Moore's just a little older. She's more well known. And you also got to remember speeches. Speeches are a big deal. And after you watch that speech at the Globes, I don't know how you don't want to award her the win, because what she said was so beautiful, and it kind of related to her film, it related to her performance, and it related to her story in the industry. It related to the overall sentimentality and mentality of the industry. So I think the speeches really helped her. And the biggest stat of all is the makeup stat, because for the past few years, whatever's won makeup has taken either Best Actor or Best Actress. Look at Poor Things, Emma Stone. The Whale, Brendan Fraser. Eyes of Tammy Faye, Jessica Chastain. It just happens where whoever wins makeup is likely to win one of the 2 big awards. It's why we should have seen Brendan Fraser beating Austin Butler coming, because Brendan Fraser, The Whale, it won Best Makeup. So I think the fact that The Substance is pretty much a shoo-in to win Best Makeup. If it doesn't win Best Makeup, I would be absolutely shocked. But the fact that it is going to win Best Makeup makes me think Demi Moore is going to pair with that nicely, because we always see an acting and makeup pair. We saw it as far back as like Gary Oldman and Darkest Hour. It just happens. Makeup and actors and actresses, they love those pair ups. They love to see the transformation with the makeup. Not to say that, Carla Sofia Gascon doesn't have a transformation. Not to say that Cynthia Erivo obviously doesn't have a transformation. But I think Demi Moore right now makes the most sense, especially given her huge Globes night. I think if anyone from the Globes benefited the most, it is her. And obviously, I do have Mikey Madison in it too. She's getting nominated, and I still think there's a world where she could win. But right now, if I had to bet anything, it would be Demi Moore winning for The Substance. But looking at these other nominees, I was a little worried about Carla Sofia Gascon, because she hasn't been getting a lot of critics nominations. She hasn't been seen a lot of places, probably because she doesn't speak English. So she hasn't been in a lot of the roundtables and the actors on actors. But really looking at Emilia Perez as this industry darling, I don't think she misses. She is the focal point of that film. Actually, I rewatched it last night after it won the Golden Globe, and I was even more on board with Carla Sofia Gascon getting nominated for lead and Zoe Saldana in supporting, just because she is, from the second you see her for the first time, she is the focal point. Yes, Zoe Saldana has more screen time, but Carla Sofia Gascon just has that magnetism that I think that movie requires and that role requires. So I definitely think she's getting in. And then Marianne Jean-Baptiste. This is someone that I think was always like on the 5 slot, but now I'm bumping her up to the 4, because she won New York Film Critics, she won LA Film Critics, and she won National Society of Film Critics. And very rarely do we see someone win that trifecta. And if you win that trifecta, you're more often than not in the Oscar 5. And I do think she's going to get a BAFTA nomination. Now, the thing with Marianne Jean-Baptiste, there are 2 big things going against her. One, her film is not in Best Picture, and it's distributed by Bleecker Street. So obviously there's this chance that they just fumble the bag altogether in getting hard truths out to the industry to see. Number 2 is I don't see her getting in anywhere but BAFTA right now. She obviously missed Globes, which was very sad and very scary. I don't think she's going to get into SAG. I'm not necessarily 100% sold that Marianne Jean-Baptiste is a surefire nomination, but I do think, just winning those 3 major critics groups and winning them by so much. I mean, she won by I think she had 79 points to win at the National Society of Film Critics. So just the fact that she is the critic darling. I mean, obviously Mikey Madison is as well, but in terms of just these under the radar performances that are just heralded heralded for their performances, not in the films, not in the screenplays, but like hard truths. This is hard truths representation here. And I think the fact that the critics are going so crazy for it, in addition to Mikey Madison, I mean, if you look at wins, Mikey Madison has the most, but Marianne Jean Baptiste is number two. I mean, she is right there in terms of wins, right behind Mikey Madison, even more than Demi Moore, even more than Gascon and Jolie and Arrivo. Let's talk about Jolie, though, because Jolie, I think, had the worst night of anyone for Golden Globes, because looking at her category, the only other potential best actor, best actress nominee for the Oscars was Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl. And Nicole Kidman didn't win, but who did win was Fernanda Torres. And now I know a lot of people are going to say it's because the Globes are more international now. They're supporting more international nominees. That is true. But also the fact that Jolie was pretty much locked for an Oscar nomination and couldn't even win the Globes against five other actresses that were not even in contention to be Oscar nominees, I think that's huge. I think that shows that Maria, the support just isn't there. And I know it wasn't BAFTA longlisted. Apparently, they didn't get the screeners for Maria yet, but I just don't see the passion for Maria that I even saw with Spencer. Like for Kristen Stewart and Spencer, she was winning all the Critics Awards. And we're not seeing that with Angelina Jolie. I think all the Critics Awards are going to Mikey Madison, Marianne Jean Baptiste, or Demi Moore. I really don't see much critic support for Angelina Jolie. And I think that's the biggest knock, is that even Kristen Stewart, whose movie was not in Best Picture, the same Pablo Larraín thing we see time and time again, Natalie Portman and Jackie as well. They weren't in Best Picture, they weren't in a lot of other categories, but they got some tech nominations, and ultimately they were, a critic darling and they got in. But we're not seeing that with Angelina Jolie. If anything, she would be the industry darling, and the industry's not awarding her. They're not even awarding her over other people that were not getting awards already. And I think the fact that Fernanda Torres won, it's the same thing as Sebastian Stan. I don't think it shows that Fernanda Torres is going to get nominated for the Oscar. I think it just shows that Angelina Jolie is not. In a similar way that I think Sebastian Stan winning showed that Hugh Grant was not. And I think that is going to be the biggest thing, because Jolie, she's not getting the BAFTA because she wasn't longlisted for it because I guess they didn't see the screeners, or it's coming out later in the UK, or they just didn't like it. And I think that's the thing, is that Maria just doesn't have the passion behind it that so many of other Pablo Larraín films, even El Conde last year with the cinematography, did. And I think this is going to be tough in a lot of categories that Maria was contending for, like costumes, hair and makeup, production design, like all these categories that I thought it could have squeaked onto, depending on the time of, release and the way they marketed it and the way they campaigned it. But right now, the fact that Angelina Jolie might miss, I don't think Maria gets in many places at all. I think it still gets a cinematography nom, maybe, but I'm a little worried for Maria. I think, Maria is slipping day by day by day. And yes, Angelina Jolie, if she gets nominated for SAG, and if she wins SAG or she wins Critics' Choice, and we'll talk about it. But I think right now, especially with the surge of Demi Moore, now the conversation is Demi Moore going to win, or is it Mikey Madison going to win? I think Angelina Jolie is far out of that conversation. I think right now Angelina Jolie just wants to get that nomination. And who did I put in here? I put in Cynthia Erivo, because I think despite the fact that the Oscars have not been so diverse that I don't think they would award two Black actresses nominees, I'm going to go with it because I think the passion is there. Obviously, she's an industry darling right now. People love her. She has been nominated before for Harriet. And I think, it would be weird if Ariana Grande Botera made it in and Cynthia Erivo didn't at this point, because they feel like such a package deal. The Oscars don't necessarily think that way. Obviously, the way the votes work, you can't guarantee that a package deal will be nominated together. But I think there's enough support for Cynthia Erivo, especially amongst the actors themselves. I think she's going to get that SAG nomination. So I definitely think at this point, Cynthia Erivo is getting in. Though I have been worried for a while that Wicked Part 1 is going to be the Barbie of this year, and it's going to miss director and actress, and the world's going to go nuts. And I still think that is a potential possibility. That's why I have her number 5. But right now, I think those contenders, it really is amongst those top 7. Again, I don't think Fernanda Torres is going to get in after the Globe win, but I think it at least gives her more of a case than someone like Nicole Kidman, who didn't win. Kate Winslet for Lee, she's been nominated places, but I still don't think that's going to happen. Pamela Anderson, she really needed some big nominations, and she didn't get them. So I'm going to go with this 5 right now, with Angelina Jolie obviously being on the bubble, but right now I have her outside of the 5. Moving on to supporting actor, Kieran Culkin won the Globe. I think he's continuing his, dominance as the precursor leader. If you look at the charts that I put in the Dill Pickle Movie Network Discord, I can link them down below as well. I mean, Kieran Culkin's been winning pretty much everything. There are some awards that will go to Guy Pearce every now and then, or Clarence Macklin, but really, I mean, Kieran Culkin's steamrolling the season. He has the most wins, I think, of anyone, maybe next to Mikey Madison. So I think he's going to win. The only thing that has me a little nervous is that, A Real Pain, I don't have it in Best Picture right now, which is making me think maybe I should just put it back in Best Picture. But I think the fact that he is still so strong, regardless of whether or not A Real Pain is in, I think just goes to show how much they love Kieran Culkin, not just in this role, but the industry at large. I mean, look at him from Succession. They loved awarding him during Succession's run. So I think this is more of a Kieran Culkin thing than A real pain thing, because I think we rarely see a winner come from a movie that's not Best Picture. I think the last time this happened was Christopher Plummer for Beginners, but even then, like, everyone wanted to award Christopher Plummer because he was overdue, and I think the same is true here. They just want to award Kieran Culkin. Not that he's overdue. I mean, this would be his first nomination, first win, but I think he's just such an industry favorite because of Succession and so many other things. And looking at the other nominees, I mean, Guy Pearce, he's never been nominated before, so it's not like he's overdue, even though he is a veteran in the craft. And I just don't see the passion for The Brutalist going to him. I think it's going to Adrian Brody and not really many other actors, though I do think he'll get nominated. I mean, Clarence Macklin for Sing Sing makes a lot of sense, but he's been getting snubbed in some places, including the Globes. That has me a little worried. If he is this year's Delroy Lindo, where he just somehow doesn't get nominated, it would put a pit in my stomach. It would make me so sad. And then, like, Yura Borzov, who's probably going to get nominated for Honora, but if Honora isn't going to win Best Picture, then, like, are they really going to give supporting actor to Yura Borzov? Probably not. Right now, I think the biggest conversation is who is in that 5 spot. And I think for a while it was Denzel Washington, but every single day, I mean, Gladiator 2 goes further and further and further in the back of people's minds. Not in mine. I love Gladiator 2, but even Gladiator 2, watching it, even as a fan of it, Denzel Washington was great, but, like, I wasn't losing my mind over it. I was like, wow, Denzel's eating it up. Denzel's loving this. Like, this is so much fun watching Denzel do this, but I wasn't like, God, give him that Oscar, you know, in a way that I was about, like, Clarence Macklin or Guy Pearce or Kieran Culkin, or even some other actors who weren't even nominated here that you might see come up in the Pickle Awards. But yeah, I really like the 5 I have here. I think Edward Norton, because of Complete Unknown, is kind of becoming a more surefire Best Picture nominee. I think it's going to pick up a few other nominations. I think it's going to get a sound nomination. I think Timothée Chalamet is going to get in, and I think Edward Norton will get in too. I think it's going to have a nice little package of about 4 or 5 nominations, and that's kind of where it ends for that. Other contenders, Jeremy Strong, he was out of the conversation. Now he's kind of back in, just because I think other contenders are slipping a bit. I don't think they're going to get 2 Honora boys in there. So I did take Mark Edelstein out of there. But, like, yeah, Stanley Tucci for Conclave could happen, especially if Conclave ends up being the Best Picture. Adam Pearson, if Sebastian Stan does get in, it would be cool to kind of have Adam Pearson along for the ride. Brian Tyree Henry never really took off, as sad as that is. So I think this 5 is what I'm sticking with the caveat that, like, Edward Norton and Denzel could alternate. You could see Denzel get in and Edward Norton miss. Honestly, if I were to see a shocking miss happen, it would actually be Clarence Macklin. I wouldn't be super surprised if Clarence Macklin missed, just because I know what the Oscars do and I know the stupidity that we're bound to expect from one of these big categories. But moving on to supporting actress, again, a pretty safe bet here. I mean, the top 10 are the same top 10 as last time. I just shuffled some things around. Who I took out of the 5, sadly, I did take Daniel Deadwyler and Ingenue Ellis Taylor out there. It really pains my heart to watch another award season go by where Daniel Deadwyler gets snubbed, but there's just no passion for The Piano Lesson. Even with Danielle Brooks last year for The Color Purple, like, Color Purple was still, like, in the top 12 or 13 contenders to get nominated for Best Picture, whereas The Piano Lesson isn't even in the top 20 right now. So I think the fact that The Piano Lesson just hasn't taken off, Danielle Deadwyler, she's getting a lot of critics noms, but she's not getting a lot of industry mentions. She didn't get BAFTA longlisted. Neither did Ingenue Ellis Taylor, and it kind of goes back to the whole Nickel Boys thing of, like, I don't even know if it's going to get into Best Picture. So if it doesn't get into Best Picture, there's no way in hell Ingenue Ellis Taylor is making it in. And then Isabella Rossellini's in the 6th spot. I know a lot of people are predicting her to get in. I still am not convinced. I like her in the movie, but she's in, like, 2 seconds of it, and I just don't think right now the Oscars traditionally go for that. And even Judd Hirsch, who got nominated for The Fabelmans a few years ago, he had a whole chunk of, like, 10 minutes where it was just the Judd Hirsch show. We're not even seeing that with Isabella Rossellini. Oh my God, there's, like, some sunlight coming through. That's so nice. It's so beautiful. I'm going to tilt my camera a little bit. That didn't fix anything, but hey, it's like Wicked. You're going to see a lot of sunlight coming through behind me. Sorry to throw shade on Wicked there. But yeah, no, I don't think Isabella Rossellini is going to happen. I've seen so much passion for her. So many people saying this is her time. This is her time. Just watching the movie, I'm not convinced. And who am I convinced by? I'm convinced, of course, by Zoe Saldana, who I think winning the Globe kind of put her back as a front runner. And not that she ever left that front runner position, but I think a lot of people were like, well, Ariana Grande Botera, you know. But I think right now, seeing the Globe go Zoe Saldana's way gives her really good momentum, especially seeing how strong Amelia Perez is with the industry. And I still think Ariana Grande Botera is strong. I think she's going to take either Critics' Choice or SAG or both. But the thing is, she's not going to take BAFTA. And I think right now, if Zoe Saldana gets Golden Globes and BAFTA, like, that is the pair that I think will traject her into the race as the frontrunner for Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars. Though I think Ariana Grande Botera is the number 2. I think it's one of the two of them. I don't see a world where Margaret Qualley ends up winning this award. Neither is Felicity Jones. But I think the passion for The Substance and The Brutalist will at least get them their nominations, especially Margaret Qualley. I mean, what a cool nomination that would be. I do argue maybe she is a co-lead, maybe she's not the supporting actress, but hey, anything to make Demi Moore's win easier, like put her in supporting. I don't care. Selena Gomez is the big wild card here. Like for a while, I wasn't thinking it was going to happen, but having rewatched Amelia Perez last night and just seeing how much of an ensemble effort it is, despite it being Amelia and Zoe Saldana's characters' stories, Selena Gomez is a very main part of that film. I mean, she is kind of the antagonistic force in that film. Now, I do have a lot of sympathy for her character. I think that's part of where the film falters, is that I think they want to make you hate Selena Gomez's character, even though she's getting screwed over a lot in that film, and she is just kind of being tossed around as a puppet. Anyway, that's for another day, another review of Amelia Perez. But I do think Selena Gomez is still a prominent part of that film, and I really do think if the industry does love Amelia Perez this much, I think she gets in, even over Isabella Rossellini, even over Danielle Deadwyler, these people that have been getting nominated more places. I don't think we're seeing Selena Gomez getting nominated everywhere, but I do think, just the fact that Amelia Perez is going to be as strong as it is, I think there's a good chance she gets in. Best original screenplay, let's talk about it. Obviously, last night, none of these screenplays won. It went to Conclave, so I still think Anora is the front runner. I think if the Globes had split it original and adapted, Anora would have won. It's just one of those things where they did combine them, so you can't really know for sure. But I do think the substance, just based on the passion, I mean, it won the screenplay at Cannes. I think it's definitely the number 2 here. I think The Brutalist is also in the conversation of Real Pain. It really is just a question of what that fifth slot is going to be. And I honestly think it's more of a process of elimination than it is thinking about who will get in. It's more of thinking who won't get in. And the way to look at that is the lone screenplay stat. I mean, every single year, there's at least one film that gets a screenplay nomination and nothing else. And for a while, I thought that was going to be Challengers. But after last night's Globes, Challengers winning Best Score has me convinced that Challengers is going to get some music nominations, which means it's going to take it away from the screenplay. And instead, I put September 5 in the screenplay slot. I know that's really weird thinking, just like process of elimination. So wait, because Challengers is in score, you're taking it out of screenplay? Yeah, because every year there's a lone screenplay nomination, and I think it's more and more likely that Challengers gets nominated for score. So I'm taking it out of screenplay. I'm putting September 5 in because right now September 5 feels like that lone screenplay nomination. I don't think it's going to get in for editing, and I do think it's at least a liked film. It's well liked enough that I think people are at least going to want to nominate it for something. And I think the actor branch isn't necessarily going to give it anything. The director branch isn't. I don't think it's going to get in for picture. So writing seems like the most likely thing for September 5. But if we go to adapted screenplay, I mean, this is even easier. Like, this is the top 5 that it's been. I think it's the top 5 that's going to stay. I think Dune Part 2 is the most vulnerable, but I'm also thinking, like, who else will get in? I mean, obviously, Wicked Part 1 has some passion, but I think the adaptation is pretty, direct to what the musical was. I don't think they really reimagined it too much. If anything, they added a lot of stuff in. And I think a lot of the criticisms of Wicked are the fact that, they added a little too much stuff back in. So I'm not necessarily thinking Wicked is going to be a big screenplay contender. Obviously, Complete Unknown could get in because it's going to be in Best Picture. But even then, I just don't see passion behind that screenplay, more so the performances and just the overall likability and entertainment value of that film. So I really think this 5 for screenplay is going to be what it is. I mean, Sing Sing missing would be heartbreaking. Nickel Boys missing would be heartbreaking as well. But I think the fact that it is such a shallow field, I still think those 2 films, regardless of whether they're not in picture or not, I think they're still going to get in. And then Amelia Perez continues to rise. Why? I don't know. But I mean, just looking at that script, I mean, it's in Mexican, it's in English, there's songs, there's lyrics, there's a lot of interesting plot hijinks in that film, including the big secret of Amelia and her family. So, like, you know what? I see the path for it. I see why they would give it to it. But honestly, in terms of wins, Conclave has this. If I have to bet any category right now, more than any other category, I'm betting Conclave to win adapted screenplay. I don't see how it goes to anything else at this point. But let's look at some of these other categories, starting with animated feature. The Wild Robot, I still have a number 1, but the fact that Flow won Golden Globes, I mean, that's huge. And I know last year we saw Boy and the Heron win Globes, and that kind of started its underdog trajectory. I do think there's a world where Flow wins the Oscar for best animated, not international, but it is an international film. But I do still think The Wild Robot is going to hang on because it did have that big festival presence as well. It was a big crowd pleaser. It was a big hit. And I think just in terms of looking at the overall Oscar voting body, I think a lot of them have kids. And a lot of them loved going to The Wild Robot. It's also going to get nominated in some music categories. So I still think The Wild Robot has the edge here. But looking at the 5, I mean, that's your 5. That 5 hasn't changed. The only thing I did was switch Memoir of a Snail and Inside Out 2 just because of the Disney sequel curse. But otherwise, I mean, even looking at the next ones in, I only have 2 other possible nominations for this. It's Transformers 1 and Chicken for Linda. Like, I really don't even see a world where they get it. Like, right now, if I had to bet a surefire win, it would be Conclave and Adapted Screenplay. If I had to bet a surefire 5 nominations, it would be this. I just don't see which of those 5 would miss. I really think it's that set in stone. But looking at Best International Feature, I haven't done Best International Feature predictions yet on this channel, but again, this feels like a very safe 5. At least the top 4 do. Amelia Perez, it's going to win this one. You could probably put $100 million on it right now. If it didn't win, I'd be shocked. The Seed of the Sacred Fig, I think it still gets in. I hope it gets in. If it doesn't get in, I'm going to have very, very, very angry words for the Academy. And number 3, I'm Still Here. Another one. Like Fernanda Torres winning Best Actress at the Globes kind of cemented that this is at least going to get in. And then Kneecap. Kneecap was one I was teetering between whether or not it would get in or not. But I do think, having seen how well it did at the BAFTA long list, I mean, it got some big BAFTA long list mentions, including Best Picture, and not just Best British Picture, but Best Picture, period. So I do think there's a good chance Kneecap gets in. The next slot is kind of up for grabs. It's either going to be Flow, which we talked about for animated, but I don't necessarily know if a movie with no language is going to get in for international language. I don't know. It just feels like they're going to go for something that actually has verbal spoken words in a different language. That's just how I think the Academy is going to think. Vermiglio has been getting some nominations and some mentions, but it didn't get a BAFTA long list, which is a little bit concerning. And then Girl with the Needle, which I think is going to be the most likely to get in. I heard it's a little bit more of a horror film or a fantasy film of some sort. I don't know much about it, but I think the fact that it's in black and white, it's very artsy, it's very artistic, it has a shot at a cinematography nomination. I think that's the one I'm going to go with as the 5th slot here. Moving on to the Best Documentary Feature, we're going to get a big snub here. I don't know what it's going to be. It's probably not going to be No Other Land, though, because that just continues to sweep and sweep and sweep all these critics awards. I think it's the front runner to win here. I think if there's anything that could get snubbed, it's probably Daughters. Usually whatever my favorite documentary of the year is gets snubbed, and that's my favorite documentary of the year. But these other ones, I just haven't seen a lot of them. So I'm just going to go off of word of mouth. I'm putting Sugarcane in there, Evelyn, Black Box Diaries. Dahomey is on the cusp there. Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat also. A lot of people are going to be predicting Will and Harper, but I think for the same reason that Michael J. Fox didn't get in, the same reason that Christopher Reeve's documentary this year didn't even get longlisted. Or shortlisted, I should say. BAFTA does a long list, Oscars does shortlist. Will and Harper, the fact that it got shortlisted, I think is the win for Will and Harper. I don't necessarily see a world where it gets a nomination, though I think it would be a really cool nomination because it is a very sweet documentary. I liked it a lot. It's not my favorite documentary of the year, but I did really like it. I watched it the other night, which brings us to the original song category, because this is where Will and Harper also got a shortlist mention for Best Song. And I will say, it's really sweet. I love Kristen Wiig on her ukulele, but really, I think in the context of the movie, it plays really nicely and really sweetly, but out of context, it's just a simple little ukulele song. Like, I don't think it's going to necessarily appeal to the music branch the way it appeals to just the people who are watching that movie, especially because they really build up to the song in the movie as like a little bit, as a recurring gag, I should say. But I think out of context, I don't really see a path where it gets a Best Song nomination, though I would like to be surprised because I think it's a really inspired, different nominee. But looking at the top 2, it's going to be El Mal or Mi Camino. Those are the 2 Amelia Perez songs that are being campaigned. Diane Warren has The Journey from the 688, so that's definitely getting in. The next 2 spots are what are up for grabs, and I do think just the fact that it is becoming more and more of a threat for Best Original Score, I think Challengers is also going to get in for Best Song. And then, Kiss the Sky from The Wild Robot, it feels like the safe pick right now, but for some reason, I just don't feel like that's going to get nominated. Just listening to it, I just don't think it's one that the Oscars are going to nominate. But now looking at what's left, like, I just don't see what else gets in. I mean, there's that Elton John song from his documentary, Like a Bird from Sing Sing, but Sing Sing is right now trying to hang on for a Best Picture nomination. I don't know if they're going to be trying to give Sing Sing all these nominations across the board. Winter Code is the song that Saoirse Ronan sings in Blitz. It's a really sweet song, piece by piece. But I just don't really know what the passion is here in Best Original Song outside of the Diane Warren and Amelia Perez and Reznor and Ross song. So I kind of defaulted to The Wild Robot for Kiss the Sky. I think overall this is a pretty weak year for original songs. I think Claw Machine for I Saw the TV Glow would have been really cool. I think Lin-Manuel Miranda once again submitted the wrong song for Mufasa. I do think he did submit the song I Always Wanted a Brother from Mufasa, but I think that would have been a much better play here. And if it was shortlisted, I would have picked it, but it didn't get shortlisted. So maybe it's to blame Disney for that, but maybe they did submit it and the Oscars just didn't shortlist it. Either way, I probably would have predicted that one if it were there. I Always Wanted a Brother, but I just don't think that it's going to get in for the other song, because I think the other song from Mufasa is pretty forgettable. So moving on to best original score, this is where, like I said earlier, I do have challengers in. For a while I was doubting it. For the while I was saying that the Oscars are just not cool enough to give a best score nomination to Reznor and Ross for challengers. But I think the fact of the matter is it's Reznor and Ross, and they love Reznor and Ross. I mean, look, they gave them the award for Soul, they gave them the award for Social Network, they gave them a nomination, I believe, for Mank. I think they were double nominated that year for Soul. So I think they love Reznor and Ross, and I think if they have a chance to award them at least a nomination, I think it's going to happen. Which is also why I'm ruling it out of screenplay, because it would no longer be a lone screenplay nomination, because it's obviously getting a nomination here. I think the top three though are still solid: The Brutalist, Conclave, Amelia Perez. I struggle to think about what the score for that film is because everything is so sung, but I do think there are moments of score that are at least a little bit memorable. Like when they were playing some of the music at the Golden Globes last night, I was like, you know what? Yeah, no, this is memorable. But I think right now The Brutalist is still far and away the front runner here. Yes, Challengers won, but I'm just worried Challengers isn't even going to get nominated for this one. So I think the nomination for Challengers here is the win, and then if it gets nominated, then we can talk about whether or not it's going to win or not. I think The Wild Robot is still in. It is probably my favorite score of the year. The only problem is that animated scores sometimes are hit or miss, and Kanto got in, but Pinocchio did not. And I think for Pinocchio to miss for score and song, Mi Papa, is it called? Me Papa? I think it's called Me Papa. The fact that didn't get in, Ciao Papa, that's what it was, Ciao Papa. The fact that Ciao Papa and the original score for Pinocchio didn't make it in has me a little worried, especially the fact that Wild Robot now is not the far and above contender to win animated feature. It has me a little worried it'll miss in score, but then looking at what's on the side, what's it going to miss for? Because it's not going to be Blitz. Like, I just don't see Blitz getting more than one or two nominations at this point. Even though I do think there's a world where they want to just award Hans Zimmer. Again, Bryce Dessner for Sing Sing. If Sing Sing gets a bit of a resurgence, then yeah, we could see that happen. But I think the resurgence would happen after nominations, not before. Gladiator 2, I don't know. Horizon, this is another one that is one of my favorites, so it's kind of a hope diction at this point that John Debney gets in for that. And then, of course, Wicked Part 1, but I think enough of them are smart enough to realize that is not an original score, that is an adapted score, just like Dune Part 2 is. And yes, I love the score for Wicked. I think it's a fantastic score, but it is a score that they took from Broadway and made it cinematic. It is not an original score. There are parts of that score that are taken right from the Broadway musical. They're based off of the songs from the movie. So the fact that it didn't even get disqualified is a little bit shocking to me, honestly, especially if you're going to disqualify Dune for this one. And I know in previous years they put in Indiana Jones, they put in Star Wars. If that's the case, then they should just let Dune play. It's one of those things where it's not the fact that Wicked is shortlisted that bothers me. It's the fact that Wicked was shortlisted while Dune wasn't. And if you're going to say that Wicked is an original score that Dune's not, like, I don't like that. I think that's kind of setting a bad precedent for what an original score is versus what it's not. But either way, I think Wicked has a chance, but I think those five are what I'm going to go with The Wild Robot being the potential one that could miss. But I'm very happy that Challengers is in now, because for a while I didn't think it was going to happen, but now I am, and I'm really happy about that. Cinematography, it's the exact same five I've been predicting. I think this is one that Maria will get into, regardless of whether or not Angelina Jolie gets in, only because Edward Lockman is such a favorite, and obviously because Pablo Larraín's films have a good track record getting in here. But those top four seem safe as well. Even Nickel Boys, whether or not it gets a Best Picture nomination, I still think they're doing so much interesting stuff cinematically with the cinematography that I think it's going to get in, even though I think The Brutalist is still the top contender there. But watch out for Amelia Perez, because Amelia Perez is going to pop up in some text that we're not expecting. Cinematography could be one of them, even though half that movie I can't even see shit because it's lit so darkly and so poorly. That's the reason why Wicked Part 1 is also not in here. But Michael Dimock for The Girl with the Needle is also one to look out for, because we love to see black and white films get in for cinematography. And right now, the only black and white film that could get into cinematography is half of Maria. So if Maria is not that black and white representation, then Girl with the Needle very well could be. Moving on to Best Editing, I still have Dune at the top, mostly because I think editing and sound go hand in hand, and I still think Dune is going to win sound. So I think the fact that it's winning sound, I'm also going to predict it in editing, but this is one where I could definitely see it changing by the time Oscar nomination happens, because I do think Dune Part 2 is getting in, but the fact that it is an editing winner, it just doesn't scream film editing winner, especially because the first one won and this is a sequel. I just don't know if they would give it to two films in a row from that franchise. The honest contender here, the one that I'm nervous about, is Amelia Perez, because it is a lot of editing, it's a lot of cutting, it's a lot of musical numbers, it's a lot of interesting weaving in and out of different songs and different spaces and different doctors' offices and cartel lands and all these things. So I definitely think there's a world Amelia Perez could get in. Same with The Substance. I think the editing there is really crisp, really quick, especially going back and forth between Sue and Demi Moore's character, back and forth. I think it's really cool. Anora is who I thought was going to win for so long, but honestly, Anora is just hoping for the nomination at this point, especially because now I'm not convinced it's going to win Best Picture. What I do have as Best Picture, but missing editing, is The Brutalist. And normally, whatever's going to win Best Picture, I would normally always put it in editing. The only thing is that The Brutalist is 4 hours long, and I think a lot of people are just going to see that and be like, nope, they didn't edit it right because it's so long. I think that's a stupid mentality to have. I think the fact that they edited it to 4 hours shows that they clearly had an intention in the editing. It's not that they just like forgot to cut stuff out. I just hate the idea that like, oh, long films can't be up for best editing because they're too long. I think if it's long but breezes by, I think you should award that the editing, but who am I to say? So The Brutalist I have outside right now. I think September 5 could be a contender. I think Challengers should be a contender for this. I just don't think it's catching on in a lot of places, though it would be the coolest win if Challengers was able to get into best editing. Again, not even winning the category, but it would be a win to get nominated. And I think that's the thing for Challengers. Every time Challengers pops into the 5 for any of these categories, I'm considering that a win because that is a film that came out early in the year, has held on. It's my favorite movie of the year, so I'd love to see it get at least a few things, and editing is somewhere where they could definitely award it. As for production design, I think this one Wicked has in the bag, though I do think the other contenders are pretty strong. Brutalist, obviously, all about architecture, so if anything's going to beat Wicked, it's going to be that one. Dune Part 2, been slipping a little bit of momentum, but still going to get in. Same as Gladiator 2. I think this next spot is where I switched Blitz and Conclave. Originally I had Blitz in, but the fact that Blitz didn't get a Set Decorators Guild nomination anywhere makes me think that it's kind of out of the race for a lot of these techs that I once thought it would be. So I put Conclave in, but I think it would be a lot of fun if we saw one of these more genre pictures make it in, like The Substance or Beetlejuice or Nosferatu. This is somewhere where I don't think Amelia Perez will get in, but who knows at this point? It could just squeak in there. Same as costume design. Amelia Perez could get in there, but I think this 5 is pretty solid. This is another category that I think even if Angelina Jolie misses, I think the costumes are strong enough that it'll get nominated. But the more I talk about Maria and the fact that Angelina Jolie might not get nominated, the more I'm worried it'll just miss altogether everything. So maybe I should take it out of the 5. But looking at who's next, like I don't see the costumes in Conclave. They're all kind of the same costume. There's only really 2 costumes. It's the Pope outfits and the women's outfits. So I don't necessarily think that is going to get nominated. I don't think Blitz is going to get nominated. I don't think Nosferatu. So really, I think it's more so by default Maria gets in, but those top 4 seem solid. I mean, Beetlejuice, those costumes are fantastic. Dune, same thing. They really love their fantasy pictures here, which is why I have Wicked in there. Even Gladiator, which is not fantasy, it is still a genre film. It's a sword and sandal epic. So this one is going to be Wicked's to run away with, but I do think that 4 at least seems very solid, with Maria being the potential snub there in that category. But moving on to makeup, as I said, makeup and acting go hand in hand, which is why I have The Substance as the far away favorite here. And I also have Beetlejuice right behind. I think this is one where if we were to see just a kind of lone win for a different film that's not really in the above the line conversation, it is Beetlejuice, but it's going up against The Substance. So there's no way anything is beating it this year. I would bet my life on this category. I'm not going to because I like my life and I want it intact. But if I had to bet for anything, it would be Conclave in adapted screenplay, and it would be The Substance here in makeup, and Amelia Perez in international. Like those 3 I would bet right now. If you were going to Vegas, bet them, because I think that's going to happen. The Substance in makeup, international Amelia Perez, and then Conclave adapted screenplay. But what else is going to be here? Dune's probably going to get in here. Different Man. I was a little worried for Wicked for a while, but I think after looking at some of the actual makeup transformations, it's not just the green for Elphaba. They actually gave her prosthetic ears to cover up Cynthia Erivo's tattoos and piercings. So I think that is impressive. Also, you got to keep in mind all the hairstyling. I mean, Michelle Yeoh, her hairstyling is beautiful. Ariana Grande, that big flowy, beautiful blonde hair, that is part of the makeup and hairstyling. So I think Wicked's definitely going to get in here. And I think, honestly, the more I think about it, the more I would want it to get in here, because I think hairstyling is just as important as makeup. And yes, would I've liked the makeup to be a little stronger? Maybe I would have liked some more whimsical Ozian looks from some of the supporting cast. But hey, the hairstyling's fantastic, so I'm going to take it. Amelia Perez, though, could definitely surprise. I mean, the fact that, we're seeing Carla Sofia Gascon in that first act literally have to go into a male presenting makeup, it's very haunting to see, and I hope she consented to it in the film. But the fact that she is having a quite literal transformation in the movie, I think is a big pro for that nomination potentially happening. Nosferatu, I think all of it is with Orlok, but I think, the impressive makeup is super impressive that they could get that nomination based on that one character alone. Same as The Apprentice. It's the Donald Trump thing. I don't think it's enough of a transformation to where I'm like, yep, that is the makeup winner, or that is a makeup nominee. And then the other shortlisted ones, this is one where I don't think Maria has a shot, especially if Jolie's not in for actress. And then Waltzing with Brando, I mean, like, who even saw that coming on the short list? I mean, I don't even think it got a theatrical release, so I don't know how it's eligible. I would be shocked if it is a nominee because I don't think it even got its Oscar qualifying run. I guess it had to have somewhere. But yeah, they transformed Billy Zane into Marlon Brando, so it is impressive. But I just don't see it beating out some of these other ones. As for visual effects, this is our penultimate award we're talking about right now. I think the top two is still so strong. It's Dune, it's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I think Better Man has kind of snuck its way into that 3 spot. I mean, everyone's talking about the CGI monkey in the Robbie Williams movie, so very, very cool for that. I mean, just the fact that we could see 5 monkey movies get in for visual effects. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a monkey movie. Better Man, a monkey movie. Gladiator 2 has monkeys. Mufasa has a big prominent monkey character. And then, of course, Wicked Part 1 has flying monkeys. So the fact that we have 5 shortlisted monkey movies here, they have the potential to do something really funny, but I don't think they're going to. I think right now, Dune Part 2 is a lock to get in and probably a lock to win. Though I do think if any year Planet of the Apes had a chance to upset the frontrunner, it would be this year because Dune Part 2 is not as big of a favorite as we thought it might be in some categories. So I think if Planet of the Apes had any inkling of hope, it is this year. But God, I'm also seeing a world where Better Man wins and then, Planet of the Apes loses yet again, but to another ape movie. It would really break my heart if Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes lost to one of the ape movies. If it's going to lose, at least lose to the Sandworms in Dune 2. But yeah, I think Mufasa still gets in. A lot of people are starting to dock it from their predictions, though I do think the fact that they were able to make the animals more expressive is a pro for the visual effects department. I think it kind of solved a lot of the problems that the last film had. And I think, the visuals are very impressive. I mean, it's a Barry Jenkins film as well. Barry Jenkins is a loved person amongst the Academy, so I'm not counting it out. I know a lot of people are putting Alien Romulus in, and shame on you. No, I think it's reasonable to expect it to get a nomination, but I just think the whole deep fake Ian Holm situation in Alien Romulus is too much for me to personally predict it. Like, I really just do not want it to happen because it was so uncanny valley. It made me so disturbed. It kind of grossed me out in a way. But I just know because I'm getting emotionally upset at it that it's going to happen, and I just have to prepare myself for the worst. But the other one, Civil War, Twisters, Deadpool, and Wolverine, probably just happy to be there for the short list. But Best Sound, another one that we kind of got a short list for. Some shocking short list mentions. Joker was not expected to get the short list, but good for it. Alien Romulus, also not expected to get shortlisted, but I think the fact that it did means that we have to keep an eye on it. But really, those top 5 seem pretty solid. I mean, Dune, Complete Unknown, Amelia Perez, and Wicked, I'm locking those in because those are the 2 big musicals. Obviously, a lot of sound. Complete Unknown, a lot of sound, trying to transform, kind of get the accurate sound of the time for Bob Dylan. All those little nightclubs and those places he was singing and performing, those little coffee house vibe, the big vocal moments, definitely rely a lot on the sound work there. And then Dune, obviously, a super big sound film. Even though I'm not 100% sold it's going to win, I think we could see one of the musicals here win. This could be one where Amelia Perez takes another win here, or even Wicked gets a surprise win here because they did sing live on that set, so that's a little bit more impressive for Wicked's end. But as for that 5th slot, I did put in Blitz because I think it's going to get something at the Academy Awards, and I think of anything, the sound is really where Blitz shines the most, the sound and the production design. So I think Blitz is going to at least get one nomination. It's not going to be totally goose-egged, but if it gets goose-egged, then look out for Gladiator, look out for Alien Romulus. That's all I'll say. And Wild Robot, happy to be there, but it would be a really cool nomination. There's a lot of beep, 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 boops from a lot of robots, a lot of animal sounds. So I would like to see the Wild Robot get in. I just don't think it's going to happen. So I always try to get mine under an hour. Yep, we're at 57 minutes. So that's great. So thank you guys so much for watching my Oscar predictions and my pseudo Golden Globe reactions at the same time. This is always a fun video to make, especially as we get closer and closer to Oscar predictions. But next week, as I said, on January 16th, I will be giving you my final Oscar nomination predictions. We will lock it in before the Oscar nominations on January 17th. And then on the 17th, I'll post my reaction video because I'm sure I'm going to have some big reactions to what happens on Friday morning or Thursday morning, whatever day of the morning it is. It's going to be the wee hours of the morning. So whatever, I will be rolling myself out of bed with my cup of coffee and my glasses and setting up a ring light at 5 a.m. on my living room floor. That will be the day I will bring you my Oscar nomination reactions. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching this one. Stay tuned for more videos coming up soon and some big changes in 2025, which I can't wait to announce to you. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching this one. And let me know down below if you disagree with any predictions and what you think this Golden Globes Amelia Perez brutalist steamroll means. And if you think Demi Moore has a shot, if you think Fernanda Torres has a shot, is Angelina Jolie completely out of the race? Let me know all those things down below. And as always, subscribe, like this channel for more. And we're happy to have you here. Thank you.